All right, so quick introduction. My name is Stefan Hof. I'm a business development manager at Exclusive Networks. I've been here since 2017. Before that, I was also a pre-sales here. So I do have a technical background. For those who don't know my face, it's on the right, not a smiley because of my daughter. She wanted to go in an amusement park and I had to go with her, but I just look like a wannabe fireman at this point. I focus on emerging vendors and supporting partners in that whole process. In the past, we organized a lot of stuff, also together with Davey. So we really focus on content, like the dark web rises, a whole webinar about dark web. Stay safe at home during the first lockdown. We saw a lot of new type of attacks, specific on end users who are at home. Integration between multiple vendors of technologies, webinars about AI, machine learning, and how you leverage them. And now our EXN webinar about XDR, NDR, and EDR. Now, on to Davey.
Yeah, so my name is Davey de Mits. I'm a pre-sales consultant here at Exclusive Network. I joined last year. My focus is mostly on everything cybersecurity. I love playing around with open source tooling. Do some coding now and then. Been focusing quite a lot of stuff on automation. I'm a Linux user. Some people always find that funny to tease me when some things doesn't work, but still do that. For the rest, like I say, I focus on identity security product. Did some API integrations last year and this year. I focus a lot on getting our solutions positioned on the micro framework. Did some, like with Stan, the AI machine learning webinar, did an integration webinar. And in terms of products, like I said, I'm focused on a bit on automation with Ansible Terraform. I work on Silverford, Exabeam, Vectra, Salt API security is number one. And in coding languages, I think Golang and Python is the thing that I use the most. So that's about what you want to know about me. So I see that in the meantime, we got some answers on our questions. Most people got some votes on the 8-inch disk, but it's not true. It was actually a tricky question. The disk format that does not exist is 1.44 inch because it's a 1.44 megabyte size for a floppy. All the other ones do exist. I must admit that I looked it up as well. I didn't know that 8-inch floppies did exist. So. Oh, sorry. Then another one, but this is a serious one to start with. The other one was an opening question. The question is, the cybersecurity market uses all of kind of great terms to talk about the same. Is that true or not true? So please vote in the channel. I just need to put it in there. Sorry, that will take a little time.
Some people would call it marketing fluff. Not me, but some people will call it like that.
Question coming up in the polling. Please vote yes or no. I'll leave the people to vote. In the meantime, we can go to the next slide.
All right, actually, why are we organizing this? Well, because we see, not only from ourselves, but also from our customers and end users, that there are a lot of issues we're facing today. Digital transformation is going extremely fast. It brings a lot of new opportunities, which is great for us, of course, but also a lot of new cyber threats, which is still great for us, but it's also very difficult to actually guide every partner and every end user in this whole trajectory because it's going very, very fast. There are popping up new technologies all of the time, especially from Israel. Gartner is popping up new quadrants. I mean, if you have to read everything, it's just a full-time job nowadays. So I think the question is, where should I focus my research on first? Right? I think that it's very important to know. All right, this is the situation at this point. It's not a greenfield, but you have certain installation. Where do you put focus on? So that's the idea of this session. We also see the war on talent. It's very difficult to find qualified people. You find people, but then you have to train them, and then they're already gone. So keeping a talent is a challenge, but also keeping interesting. But what we see is that a lot of people are hoping that machine learning and AI will be the new holy grail, because then they won't have to have that people anymore, because the computer will fix everything for you. AI machine learning will help you a lot, all right? I think most security vendors today are actually big data vendors, and having that data and doing the right stuff with it is very important to actually spare you a lot of time. So all the groundwork can be done by a lot of machine learning, but still you need good people to actually look at it, then the results, and then intervene. And another thing that we actually see a lot today is that a lot of people don't know their environment. They think they know, but actually we see that with proof of concept with certain software, that some things pop up they actually had no idea about. So knowing your assets and have full visibility is also very important, because we have a lot of data everywhere, on-prem, cloud, hybrid, whatever, but you don't have that full visibility. So that's also a very important issue. And if you ask me, it's going very, very fast. I mean, we are full-time occupied with security, and even for us, it's going fast. This is just for the security hype, and we see a lot of new stuff coming up, like XDR, pen testing as a service, or the more breach and attack service, so automated attacks. We see SOAR, NDR, CASB is already part of SaaS, and I mean, it's going very fast to keep up with everything. And it's the same for cloud security. If you look at cloud security, we also have like a very cool graph. It comes up, all right. So in cloud security, it's the same, all right. You see a lot of these terms here. We are in the top of the hype cycle. Some of them will survive, some of them won't, or being are going to be obsolete in a few years, or a part of anything else. So new terms, a lot of exciting stuff, but also very difficult to keep track with what's happening at this point. What is important and where do you need to focus on right now? So this is a question again, yes or no. We are facing difficulties in following up on technology and market evolutions, right? Not only cybersecurity, but in general in whole IT. For me, that's a big yes, by the way.
I see that the answers on the previous question were a bit equal, let's say, on the new terms. So, okay, so now a lot of people got we got some vote coming in on the yes. So that's the reason I think why we got this webinar organized for you guys. Okay, great. Let's continue.
So maybe we are also a part of marketing in us, and everyone is a part of marketing, because when we thought about, okay, let's do a session about EDR, XDR, and NDR, it's actually the abbreviation of exclusive networks. So maybe it's a visionary of our founder more than 10 years ago. But anyway, we see these terms being thrown around like it's nothing, like it's scammy, like, oh, you have to have EDR, XDR, NDR. I mean, all those solutions, of course, have value, but let's look at them, deep dive at the technology of an EDR, XDR, and NDR solution, and then see how well it will fit in our current environments. Let's start with EDR. All right, EDR stands for endpoint detection and response. In the past, we had like the traditional EDR vendors who were not focused on the endpoint protection platform, another abbreviation, EPP, where endpoint protection platform was more focused on protecting and preventing malicious code to be executed. EDR was more the posture of assume breach, right? We cannot block everything. Some stuff will happen on your endpoint, on your server, and then we need to be able to detect fast with a good response. If we go back in history and we look at where we started, more than 10 or 15, 20 years ago, it was traditional antivirus, all right? We were based on signatures. We know it's malicious. We have a hash for it. If it's coming in our organization, we can see the hash. It's malicious, fine. We know, we block it. But that was not good enough anymore. We still have new malware. Doesn't have to be a 0-day every time, but attackers can just tweak it right enough so your signature won't last anymore. Then a new invention was born. Next gen in antivirus was more like on exploit detection and that type of stuff, which is good, but again, not enough for the more advanced attacks later on. And then we had like the whole new players, the EDR, like a Carbon Black, those type of vendors, but they are purely focused on EDR. And EDR was very cool. It's like a flight data recorder. The moment you boot your PC, we will log everything that happens, every file operation, every code execution, registry change, all that stuff. We're gonna log everything, so you have a ton of information. But that's a lot of work for you to look in that information and what is now relevant and what is not. So that brings a lot of extra stress on your team. So actually what we then did, or not we, but some vendors did, was look at a new approach and see, all right, an EDR solution is great, but how can we actually make sure that we just show you the relevant stuff and automate a lot of those things? So then we go to the next gen EDR players like we have today. So if you look at EDR, where do we focus on? Okay, we will check this on the Lockheed Martin kill chain. Okay, those guys are also known for their F-16s, I think, or anyway, just Army stuff, and also on MITRE. So Lockheed Martin, this is our kill chain, starting from the recon phase. Like, I'm an attacker, I'm gonna check out who I'm gonna attack, I'm gonna gather some information. Next, you go to the weaponization. You have a good exploit you want to use, and an exploit like a certain program or code you wanna abuse. We can deliver through an email, and then if we can install it on an endpoint, we can do our objectives, and then yeah, as an attacker, you succeeded. So EDR focuses really on the exploit part, the installation part, but also the command and control. For those who don't know that, command and control is what an attacker actually, the communication between your victim and the attacker, because you will script a lot, of course, to automate things, but some stuff you want to do with yourself as an attacker, and there's a command and control part. So that's a focus for an EDR. And later on, we will see for NDR that it will overlap a bit, but also a little bit different. Where MITRE actually focuses more on, once you get in, what are the other stuff you can do as an attacker? So the exploits, the control, the execute, and maintaining that that position. So I'm not sure it's gonna work. I'm gonna try to draw something if it will work. So initial access, execution, all this type of stuff is more the focus for an EDR solution. All right, great. So that's really the focus of an EDR solution. All right, we can detect some lateral movement because we also will look at certain outbound and inbound connections. But if you look at lateral movement, exfiltration, that's more the focus for NDR tools, which will Davey explain later on. What an EDR should do. All right. Yeah. So what an EDR actually should do is make life easier for you. We have loads of information. You don't want to be that guy that has to search to every file or every log file. No, when something is happening, you want it quite clear, single pane of glass, look at what is essential here. All right, we got malicious code executing. We will know, okay, it's coming from Chrome, it's start up a command prompt, and it launches some really suspicious PowerShell. This is what an EDR should do, all right? It will also now give you the tools needed to do the whole investigation, but in a quick and clean way, show you what is going on, what is key, what is essential. So this is what AI machine learning can do for you. It can support you. It won't replace anyone, but it will make it a lot easier for you so you can do your job better. If we look at EDR, and if you're looking at EDR technologies, so it's a vendor agnostic session. So we're not going to talk about any vendors, but what is important is if you look at, okay, what is the tech behind that vendor? Look past the marketing slides, do the proof of concepts, check out actually, and asks to those people what is important. Cloud dependency is one of those things I find important. You can use cloud, of course, because it's ridiculous if you don't use it. But what is the catch rate if you don't have any internet connection? Is it really behavior-based, or is it still signature-based? Because there's still a lot of vendors who claim to have behavior-based, but actually work a lot on signatures. As soon as you go completely fileless, the catch rate isn't that good anymore, right? For me, important is like a storyline view, like we saw before, because that gives you, or that saves you a lot of time to immediately see what is going on. Okay, that correlation, that's key. Mapping on MITRE ATT&CK, of course, it gives you not only in detail the view, but also context, all right? You have to know what is going on. Is he going after credentials, the attacker? Is he going to your, is he going lateral? So those are those indicators you need to have. An EDR solution today is, and we think about on-prem situations, we are clients, we are servers, but an EDR also has to look forward, because we have a lot of container security also needed. We'll go deeper on that. But it's not just on-prem anymore. You have to have an EDR solution that also is cloud ready. And then I think the last part is key for every technology you're gonna onboard, is integration and openness, all right? If you look at certain platform players, there are some platform players who don't play along with others. There are those who are semi-open to others, but it's really important that you don't have that vendor lock-in and that you have an open platform who can play well with all the other people. Why? Because an EDR solution can, for example, isolate an entire machine, or it can force your MFA solution to trigger an MFA pop-up. So stuff like that can really increase your security just by integrating solutions with each other. All right, Davey, it's up to you.
Thanks. So that was a part of the EDR. So let's look at what NDR does. NDR is network detection and response. So it's not on the endpoint, but it's on the network, as the name says it. The goal of an NDR is to give you a vision on what's going on, or an insight, let's say, on what's going on in your network itself. Right? If you look at the EDR, where you focus on the endpoint, you see what's going on endpoint level, and you want to look at behavior, see if anything malicious is happening. This is what we do with NDR on network level. Now, there are a few challenges, of course. The first thing that you can imagine is that if you want to see what's going on, are you gonna capture or take a record of all the traffic in your network, store it somewhere, and then start deep diving? I think that would be a very challenging job, especially if the network is bigger and bigger. Imagine also that most of the traffic that you will see is probably just normal traffic, or users doing their thing. There are a few other challenges, like if you want to see what's going on in your network, you probably have, we see a lot of networks evolving that way. You're going to clouds, right? You have a hybrid environment. So it's not just only the on-premise network. You want to see traffic in your cloud environment, maybe data center, and whatever your network is built of and which sites you have. You need a full picture to see if anything is going on. Now, probably a lot of you might say, like, oh yeah, but we have a firewall in there in our network, so we can do some captures on that. We have logging, we see what's going on there. It's partly true. The problem is there that you only see, I think what the market's calling the north-south traffic. I know there's, of course, segmentation, or I hope you have segmentation, and you can see some traffic in between there. But what about traffic between two servers in the same network segment, for example? So you can go to micro-segmentation and try to solve it that way. What an NDR does is really taking and giving you a vision on that part in full, and that you can see what's going on. Gartner has a huge but well-written definition on what an NDR is. We're not going to read it. I highlighted some words, and let's focus on those ones. So it starts with the non-signature based techniques, and that's really important. It's not about getting information out of the network flow in your environment and looking for signatures that we know that there are IOCs or whatever. That's not the goal. The goal, because there's things like encrypted traffic. You don't want to decrypt it because that puts load on the material, and that doesn't scale. So what you want to do is have more behavior focused. Get into, like, is this the type of traffic that we expect. Is it normal that a certain server is communicating to the external world, for example, while you're not expecting it to? It's a challenge to analyze the traffic raw. So what an NDR does is build models on it and focus on behavior. You're just not dumping the raw traffic and have fun with it. That won't work. You need to have models and with machine learning on top of that to give you a limited view on or a more let's say narrow view on the environment, so that you can manage it and that it's perfectly feasible to work with it. It's done with what Gartner really describes as a strategically placed network sensor, and that's really what it is. You place sensors in your network, you ingest the raw traffic, and the sensor will take out or produce what is relevant for the NDR to give you the material, the data that you can work with. And of course, it will not be a network detection and response if you cannot do any automatic responses. So you need to be able to, with the tool, trigger other systems as well. That makes sense, of course. I found this from a guy named Austin. He works at SaaS. You can find him on Twitter at Hunt Operator, and he actually described this network detection response or network analysis problem as more of a data science problem. And it's kind of true. Storing all this traffic is hard. It's not only difficult to look into it, but also where are you going to store it? All this kind of traffic. You got this cool graph, which I didn't include, but it's about the amount of traffic that's going on in a network a day. It's incredible. And the bigger your environment, the bigger that data gets. So, and a lot of that traffic is normal. So you only want to focus on what is, let's say, anomalous traffic. And that doesn't even mean that it's malicious, right? It's not because it's abnormal that it's malicious, but at least your NDR will say like, hey, this is what we see that might be not that normal traffic. It's not what we really expect. And those sensors that are in there will do that for you, get you some metadata into the NDR, which allows you to really focus on and get your orientation in the direction of what is really potentially bad traffic, and that's what you want. That's what you want to see. So it's really about, is all this traffic relevant to what I see? You really want to focus on the little part at the bottom of this triangle. Again, if we just what we saw on the EDR part, look at the NDR part for Lockheed Martin and the MITRE framework. We're a bit more in the bottom of the Lockheed Martin, or at the end, I would say. It's really on the focus on the command and control. So the C2 channel, where adversaries take control over a host in your network and do their thing through that communication channel. And then they start active actions in your network, like lateral movement, discovery of other systems. In the end, to get their goal, do they want to deploy ransomware? Do they want to take over your domain? Do they want specific data and exfiltrate it? That's the information that you want to see in what's going on in the network itself. So if you look at an NDR tool, what should you expect if you want to investigate a tool and like, okay, I want this, what is the most important parts? We believe that the first thing that is important is that you get a prioritization in terms of like which host to focus on. I should have turned this around, actually, put the host first, because we see some tooling working with threat and risk score, for example, on host and accounts, which is a great thing, because I would say like start there. This host is, we've seen it activity in some malicious traffic. Take a look at what's going on, take a look at what we have seen. And then if you continue, you should get those attack lifecycle focused elements where you can see that, okay, there has been a port scan. We've seen a C2 channel doing some beaconing to the outside world. So that's a bit strange. We've seen lateral movement to another system, some file share activity, etc. And in the end, for example, that you can see that data has been exfiltrated and how much data. And even if it's encrypted and you don't see really the content of what's extracted, at least you can see that something happened, and then maybe you can move and pivot to your EDR to get more information, like in which process was that, can you get more information on which data was exfiltrated, etc.
So here you can see how NDR and EDR can help each other, because like Dave, you mentioned, what if we see in our NDR solution that a certain host is at risk, but your EDR solution did not yet trigger something. At this point, you can actually, in your EDR tool, go to that host and pinpoint, okay, which process is responsible for that specific network connection. And in that way, two tools actually enhance each other. So it's not EDR versus NDR. It's really more a complete solution if you combine the two.
So what would make an NDR interesting enough to investigate? Right? There are a few items that we find important to focus on. Again, like Stan mentioned, this is vendor agnostic session, but these are items that really you should look into when you get a vendor when explaining his NDR solution. First of all, they should be transparent on the technology they use. Like, how do the sensors work? And we don't mean with transparency like giving you an exact detail. But at least you get some notion from them. How do they manage to get from this huge amount of traffic to limited traffic? What's the load on your environment when you deploy this? That's important that they are transparent. Also on the models, like what are you using? Which machine learning technology are you really using, and what are you doing with it? Again, no details, but it should be a bit transparent on are we using this and are you updating the models, etc. Get a mapping on MITRE. If you don't get a mapping on MITRE, how will you know what the focus of the NDR solution the tool is? So you really need that mapping. Vision towards hybrid and cloud. You see this matching with EDR stuff. It's basically almost the same, because it is important that you have it on-prem, but yeah, if you have a cloud environment, and you need to be able to do exactly the same there, so you get a vision of what's going on. And again, make sure that they're integrated and open, right? With integration and openness, we mean like automatic responses, like isolating the machine, or alert, giving a SOC an alert, like we've seen something, and if there's not an API, then integration will be difficult. Not only for custom stuff that you want to write, for example, but it's also for other vendors to integrate with it. So it needs to have a proper API well documented. So that's the important part. All right, up to a new question. For the people who paid very well attention, there was an acronym in one of the previous slides and it was fake. Which one is it? Is it API? Is it ATT? And is that and? Yeah, CK? Is it A-GBWC or is it IDS? I'm going to put the question in Discord, and please give us your votes in the polling channel. There it is, and I'll give you guys a help with the options to answer. There we go. Please provide your answer in Discord. We'll see who paid attention until now, who didn't fall asleep. Yes. We'll continue in the meantime, and I'll get back to the question. All right. So we've seen EDR, we've seen NDR. So what is XDR? XDR is extended detection and response, and they could use the E for this because it's also extended, so we use the X, right, to get an XDR abbreviation. The goal of an XDR is getting all your log sources, all your tooling that you have that is like security oriented, like your EDR, your NDR, authentication log, stuff like that, to get it ingested in a single tool, which will not only collect and store them, because that would make it just what would be called as a data lake, but you want to do automatic correlation of these logs. You want to have smart insight on what the logs are and how things are related to each other, to allow you to quickly act on things that happen in your network that might be that are relevant to investigate. They don't even need to be malicious, but at least they deviate from what is expected to be a normal behavior, for example.
So XDR. XDR is more like a new approach, again, of security, not a product itself. I mean, a lot of vendors claim they're XDR, but if you look at Gartner, they have like a whole term, which is, yeah, it just gives you a headache to read. So let's keep that term and focus on what is now important from that. First of all, an XDR product is based on centralization of data. All right, we want our data at one point, at one place, and most of the times that will be a data lake in the cloud. So all the data of relevant sources at one point. Those are different log sources we're going to see later on. We also want a correlation of that data, because that's the big difference between an XDR solution and more traditional SIEM, for example, is with an XDR, we expect that the machine learning models will do the correlation for you. You don't have to write your own rules if this happens and I see that, I mean, that could be a use case. You can still write your custom rules, but essentially you want a correlation of data. So you have a single pane of glass where you can also do your incident response. So from one central point, you want that data to be correlated and then do an action on it. So that's the last part. Okay, sorry. It's a centralized incident response. All right. What is important already to mention is that you have to try to avoid vendor locking. I'm the biggest sucker for the vendor locking. I started with an iPhone and then I bought like everything Apple related. So I'm totally into that vendor. But if, for example, next iPhones are really, really bad, I do have a problem because I already invested in that much technology that it's very difficult to get out. It's the same for cybersecurity. There's nothing wrong with having multiple products for the same vendor, but you do need to realize that if a product's not good enough anymore, you have to be able to pull out one piece without everything falling apart like a house of cards. So extended, right? So extended detection and response. We see here one of those are actually all of our log sources. Yeah. So those are all the log sources that we can send to our XDR platform. Most XDR players today are basically EDR players who then maybe were already platform players and added like firewall logs, or maybe had already a cloud access security broker solution and provided all that information to the same data lake. We also have like the fully open XDR players who don't have an agent and just work with every other agent also. So those are two types of XDR players today. All the information, we're going to put it in a data lake, but before we're going to dump it in that data lake, we need to make sure that our computer can actually read that information. Because if you work with multiple vendors, everybody just like has their same flavor or a specific flavor. So we need to make sure that our data correlation can actually happen. So it's only possible if we can actually ingest all that data. So third-party support is very important. It goes to the data lake where you can still write your own queries and stuff, but the idea is that we want to automate as much as possible, so the data correlation. And from that point, we're going to do a response. So if you look at this first part, I mean, that is like traditional SIEM. And then starting from here, we got like the SOAR. And the SIEM was ingesting data, you write your rules, it will trigger something, and it will give you an alert. And if you went further with the automation, you could add a SOAR, and then we can have a response automated. With an XDR, it's just like everything happens from one single pane of glass, no different solutions, just from one point. So that instant response, you want to automate that. You don't want that to be dependent on a worker. And it will follow a nice workflow, and it will actually work with all the APIs of your other security solutions. And for example, if your EDR solution sees something happening on a certain host, an API call can be done to either the firewall, like, okay, block all that traffic also, or to your identity access and say, okay, that user trigger an MFA or block that user. So that's the whole idea about an XDR solution.
Yeah, and I think also with what is important is that I think that there are two types of XDR solutions. You have what we maybe call a semi-open solution, coming from a certain direction in cybersecurity, like for example in EDR, where they evolve towards XDR. You have products that really focus completely from the XDR platform or SIEM approach and moving into that direction. I think the important difference, and it's up to you, of course, when you look into products to look at what you like the most, maybe, or what fits your current solutions the most, is that a fully open platform really allows a lot of transparent log ingestion into the platform. This is an example of what you could get, of what you should get when you have an XDR in place. It will tell you, for example, based on users, or it could be on assets or whatever, a sort of timeline with risk, that it gives you an idea when stuff might be malicious, might be going bad, and you want to look into suspicious traffic, suspicious activity coming from all kinds of areas, like if the EDR says there's a process execution, or there has been a malicious download or a big amount of that data being transferred, which would come from both EDR and NDR, for example. It should all fit a sort of a timeline, give you the overview of the reasons why something happened, and the ability to deep dive more into the raw logs, like if you want to start the threat investigation to get an idea what triggered this information. So that should be your front view, also helping your SOC if you have it to help them out, or even security guys, which needs to keep an eye on their environment during the day.
So we have a question from Ram, who's asking, what's the difference between an XDR solution and a next-gen SIEM like an XP, for example, and what do we prefer? It's a very good question, and I think the line is very thin because even Exabeam rebranded themselves also as an XDR. They started the XDR collision. So in my opinion, Exabeam is an XDR solution. Why? Because it's really an open platform and it's not dependent on any vendor. The more traditional XDR players, or most XDR players now, are based on their endpoint solution and then adding extra information from third parties, maybe. So it depends on the setup you already have. My personal preference, but that's personal, is more the approach of Exabeam. Because if you want to replace one part of one of those log sources, it doesn't matter for our XDR approach. While with some platforms, if you want to replace an EDR or maybe GASB or whatever other log or security solution, that can have an impact on it, on your XDR. So I hope that's clear for you. Maybe David, you have a different point of view.
No, I agree. I think that if you look at the SIEM, I think an XDR is given it needs to have a name, and I think XDR is like the name that the market has chosen to describe the products that get more intelligence in it, right, and get more stuff done for you, because not just looking at the data and creating your own rules to get alerting and stuff and to get actions done. You have the SIEM, you have the SOAR products, and I think that in the end it will all more and more, you see the need of vendors doing it as well, evolving to the XDR terminology, let's say. So if you look at an XDR, what makes it interesting enough to investigate? What should you focus on? Let's say that we find it important that it's an open platform. If it's a vendor lock-in, it will make it more difficult, because in the end you will have log sources that you want to ingest, because it will make the product more intelligent. It will make the feedback more valuable for you. If you cannot ingest those logs, that's a shame, because you have it in your environment and then you have the tooling and you cannot combine them. So that's a very important aspect, that it's allowing you to do that. Again, transparent on the technology. Correlation models, are they updated? How frequently are they updated? Can we customize? Can we create our own rules in case it's necessary? Make sure that the vendor can adapt when the threat landscape changes, because if those models or this technology that they're using is not being able to update, then it will lag behind in the end. So that's important that they can follow up. Again, mapping on markers is a very important aspect in that part. Now the goal, I guess, is we said simplify the life of a SOC analyst. I would even say like a security guy analyst, and some people that are in your environment, even if there's a small team or it's a bigger team, it doesn't matter. You want the guys to have indications, prioritization on what to look first, what things they need to look at, and what is probably as normal and what is abnormal. The goal is to get faster into action, right? Make sure that whenever you do threat hunting or investigation response, that you quickly can act on things, and that's the integration openness. The tooling should allow some automatic responses. Stan mentioned it a few slides ago, that for example, that it's a hard way to lock out a host and just kick them out of the network because we saw some maybe malicious traffic. That will be a bit harsh, but you could like ask the user to re-authenticate to a server, insert an MFA, make sure that he validates again that he's the one doing the activity, or that the host is the host activity that's been done. So yeah, integration is again important, and I think reporting as well. If you want to report to upper management on what's going on, you need a decent reporting capability. So another question for the Discord channel.
I think this is the most important question of today. That you realize what XDR should do. Right?
I'll put it in. There we go. So it's there. So is an XDR an endpoint solution that is working on-prem but extending also into cloud and container environments? Or is it a tool which is doing collection and correlation analysis on the collected log data for extended insights? Is it a data lake, just an extended data or lake, something like that? Or it's just a SIEM and a SOAR? It's all just the same. Put your votes into the channel. Thank you. Mita will continue. I'll get back on the answers right there.
All right.
By the way, on the previous question for the acronym, so it's a bit deviated, but it was the AWGBWC. That was just an acronym, like acronyms just because we can. So it was a fake acronym from us. So file capture.
All right, we'll go quickly to today's threat landscape. So that's not the focus, but we still need to clear some stuff out before going further. Again, zero-day exploits, I think in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, we're still gonna say the same. Zero-day exploits are very, it's a very great danger. If you look at Chrome, I think this year alone, I think 7 zero-day exploits who had complete remote so remote code execution. But not only 0 days, we see a lot of more advanced attacks through supply chain attacks. With supply chain, you install your software because it's trusted software of a supplier, but that supplier is breached actually at the source. So that's one of the things with supply chain attacks. That really gives you an insight that you should go for a zero trust model because you cannot actually trust anything that's happening in your environment. Even trusted software isn't safe anymore. Next, we have the APT groups. Most of you won't ever be in contact with them because those are the advanced persistent threats. They target the government for cyber espionage, tech, pharma, telecom, whatever. But a lot of their techniques and also software are sometimes being dumped or found online. And all other criminal organizations actually just speed that up and use those very incredible tools. So it's still a big threat for everyone out there. We see a lot of account abuse, not only stolen credentials. In the dark web, you will have database dumps for credentials, but just Google have I been pwned and enter your own Gmail. It's not for phishing, just enter your Gmail or Hotmail account or whatever, and you will see how many times your credentials were already breached. And I will assure you, it will be a lot. Service accounts, again, in a more advanced attacks, service accounts is a very easy way for an attacker to go lateral because most service accounts are also admin or even domain admin. And for any system admin now or in the past, who dares to change that password? Because if you change that password, that probably won't work again, that service anymore, and then you're the one who did it. Impersonation, so it's another form of account abuse. Everybody's the boss. A lot of bigger companies actually lost millions because they just write over a check to the attackers. This really confirms that identity is really the new parameter. Doesn't matter where you are, identity is key. And I think that we see that with the whole SaaS and adaption, that identity is very important. One of the results, if you're breached, is actually the dual concept of stolen data and ransomware. For those who are encrypted, but who were able to put back the files because they have a good backup, then the attackers just say, okay, we also stole your data, so maybe you put your files back, but we will dump your files on the internet if you have to pay us. So still extortion. And visibility, we mentioned it a lot. We will still mention it because visibility is key. We have customers who were breached because they didn't install a good EDR solution on every endpoint that they had. They installed it on what they thought they had, but apparently there were still some endpoints in their network or some servers that nobody was aware that it was there. So a lot of threats, a lot of solutions. Where do you actually begin? Okay, first of all, visibility on all assets and users. If it's on-prem or the cloud, you should know where it is. First, we will talk about the more traditional vectors and how those fit in. right? Perimeter security, stuff like that. But then we will move on, and then all the acronyms will come to picture, and that's 2 hybrid cloud solutions. We will go through them. And then, okay, next step, expansion. How, if you have that on-prem hybrid cloud environment, how does those new technologies actually can help you secure your environment? All right, now, the idea is that we're gonna draw some stuff. If you have any questions, please do ask. All right.
I think it's also important to mention also that it's whenever you're looking into technologies, solutions like this, and the ones we're going to go through, check your coverage on MITRE. It's really being updated frequently. I don't know how many times, but it's constantly updated. It's a very, very good framework. So check your coverage, see where you are with solutions as the vendor, ask us, whatever, to help you out and see where you are. So yeah, this is a bit of the more challenging part. We're gonna do a drawing, some sketching on the board. I just hope it works because this is where it went bad in the beginning. So Stan, give it a try.
All right, so traditional perimeter network, we had our firewall, and it was the center of a perimeter. And under that firewall, we had like different segments for our endpoints. This should be a laptop. I hope it's clear. Some servers, that could be like a database server, or maybe some other a mail server, for example. That should be the Gmail icon, but I'm not that going sketching. So that was more traditional. You got the firewall. It could be a proxy for your internet traffic, or it could be a web application firewall to accept certain applications on-prem. And that was connected to the big bad internet. But as we all know, today it's not only a network perimeter anymore, because our data and our applications are like everywhere. And our email, traditionally we had our email exchange on-prem, but nowadays chances are very big that everybody here is running Office 365, which we have our email solution. I know Microsoft has their own email solution, but it's also possible to add an extra email solution, maybe a secure email gateway. Yeah, secure email gateway. But it can also be here, secure email gateway. We can put it in line, which means that every email that flows in or out has to pass it. But for internal email flow, if you contact your colleague that's on the same email server, then we need an API integration to make sure that that also is secure, all that email. Traditionally, we had our antivirus, all right, it was installed on every endpoint on every server, and that was good enough to keep you safe in the past. Patch management today is still very important. Again, for all those 0 days, there won't be 0 days as soon as they're known, but you can make sure that if a 0 days becomes known, almost a week or 2 weeks after every major attack, we'll try to use that 0 day to leverage it. So quick patch management is still key today. All right, user awareness. You cannot draw user awareness, but it's still important for your users to think twice before they click. Okay, so train them. But to be honest, it's not always Prince of Nigeria anymore who is sending an email. It's getting more and more difficult to check that. So good email security is still key because it's still #1 attack vector.
One thing I also want to add is, some people might also mention that the AV can also be on the firewall level. So I'll add AV right there as well. Firewall has some capabilities there as well. So we know that it's just with even, you can even mention like in Office 365 scanning on the email attachment that an AV is doing the first filtering. Just wanted to add that.
Indeed. So if we look at MFA, it was traditional MFA. All right, if we go connect to our VPN, we're gonna make sure we got an MFA, like multi-factor authentication. You connect to your firewall, and then you're gonna factor, and then it's safe because you're now inside the perimeter. And that's kind of ridiculous that you think then you're safe at that point, because it's not because you're in the environment that you're safe. I mean, we find it normal that we're gonna do an MFA if we connect to Office 365. That's okay. But we don't do that if we go internally to our email or internally to any application. So that's also MFA should be external, of course, but also internal if you want to access any type of application. Also important with MFA is that it's not always in your face, that we have some kind of smart algorithm behind it, that you don't have to do MFA all the time from the same machine to the same resources. There has to be some kind of risk based behavior behind it.
Yeah, I think indeed, like when you're connecting in the morning to your network, you probably like Stan mentioned, you open a VPN, you're logging in on Office 365, and then you're able to do your job. You're connected maybe the whole day to connect to cloud and internal systems. But then what if something goes, is being detected as this is weird traffic from your host? What if you clicked on a phishing mail? And what if attacker took over your host? You're not aware of it. That basically means that he has the same rights and ways of connecting to the internal network, just like you have, right? So then, indeed, what Stan is mentioning, that for example, here you could do. Oh, sorry for that. Let me put it in yellow. You can make a connection, right, or the attacker can make a lateral movement right there. Some tools may see it, and the way to get in between that connection is, for example, adding another MFA factor for authentication on this part of the server. So that's the internal MFA part, and it could be risk-based to get it more dynamic.
So single sign-on, SSO, another cool abbreviation. With single sign-on, the idea is you authenticate once, and then you're already authenticated for every other solution. So we have our Active Directory here on site, but we also have our Azure ED. And so we have a hybrid cloud environment with on-prem and cloud. And an Azure AD, you're already authenticated because you have the link between your AD and Azure AD, will automatically make sure with single sign-on you're already connected to maybe your Salesforce, which is a cloud application, and your Office 365. So one time you sign on, and the right technology will make sure it will actually share that information, so you're already single sign-on on all those applications. Much easier to work with, and yeah, security. The focus of security is always you have to think about, okay, how many issues will I have? How many people will be mad because they have to do the MFA again? They have to sign in every 2 weeks again with all different types of devices. So it's you have to find a way to make sure you can actually not irritate your users. I think that's key in security. CWPP. The one who invented that is key marketing guy, really. Cloud Workload Protection Platform. So like we mentioned before, our EDR solution will come in place on your endpoint, on the database server, email server, whatever. But what with all cloud security? And with cloud security, I mean container security. If you look at, we had our physical machines. Then next step was we're going to virtualize it. We got the virtual machines. It was your Windows and multiple Windows devices on one physical machine. But what if you only want that specific service there to run? Then we have like containers. It's a small size of a virtual machine then, which is very small and very easy to scale because it can pop up immediately and be shut down immediately. But that has to be also secured. So all those different containers should be secured, and that's where your cloud workload platform will come in, because they will make sure that you have the same visibility and protection as the normal EDR solutions you have today. Next is CASB and SASE. That's really a difficult one. CASB is actually still quite simple to explain. It's a cloud access security broker. So the idea is that if you access any type of cloud application, it will go through a broker, and you have all your policies defined, you have your visibility, your enforcement. It can all be done on the CASB. Now, SASE is really just, CASB is a part of SASE. SASE stands for Secure Access Secure Edge. and it's really a whole different topic, and that should be a session by itself, because it's not just focused on cloud applications, it's also a whole networking part. David, you want to comment on that?
Sure. I think SaaS is more, it's been defined as more an architectural approach, where, as we all have seen and we're all doing it, we're not always in our pyramid anymore. We're not always the user, and I hope I can draw a lot. We're not always the user here in the network connecting to our on-prem environment, and there we're safe because we're protected by the firewall and whatever we have there. We're the user who's working from remote in a remote office, from remote on an airport, and of course at home, right? The goal of SASE, or the architecture that SASE describes, is that you go through your CASB to get access to these different cloud sources without really being secured by in a certain network. So it's all about focused on application security. I would describe it a bit as removing a bit of the gap or the difference between network and the applications and bringing it together, focusing on application and the data security itself. And the CASB is, of course, an important part when you look at clouds. If you look at other, like for example, your on-premise equipment or data center equipment that your users still need to be able to access. You're looking more at SD-WAN, VPN. So that's it's an architecture on how the security visions or how the environment should be built, moving away from only the on-premise. But indeed, it's a topic on itself. It will be a webinar on itself. Let me take that one as well. What we see and what is really growing more is API security. We see it more and more coming in. There's the OWASP top 10 on API security. Take a look at it. It's really well written. Giving you an overview of what's about. It's basically not only focused on APIs that are exposed, for example, by cloud application, but also on whatever you're writing, for example, with developers in your own environment. They're writing application exposing APIs, and that's what it's about. For example, if an API allows you to get access to certain data, is it really limiting you only to that amount of data? Or, for example, does it allow you with specific queries to get more, which means that that is not well properly defined in your role. Where's the EDR stand?
Yeah, so where does EDR fits in? I think I already mentioned it. Let's go for another color again. Well, here, of course, on that endpoint, it's where we still see everything. So on that endpoint, on those servers, but a good EDR solution will also have like modules for the cloud workload protection, because you want that in a single pane of glass. So the EDR will also be active in the infrastructure or your container security. So that's where EDR fits in at this point. If you then look at network detection and response, Davey.
Yeah, it's like we said, the NDR is more focused on everything that's network related. So if I need to draw it, I'm in green color right now, I would draw it right here. It's a bit difficult, but this is really like network connections on-prem. And I would even draw it like into your Azure, and the AD is maybe between brackets because Azure, running like extensive, running the container networks. If you have a direct connection with a data center, that's also a connectivity where the NDR can look into. And it's really about deploying those strategic sensors in those environments, in those VLANs, maybe on the hypervisor level. Make sure that you get that visibility and that the tooling can show you what's going on all these different network parts. So that's where you need to situate it a bit.
So if you want to know where XDR fits in, well, that's actually quite simple. That's just everything, all right? All those log files can be relevant. You don't have to send everything, but the relevant parts of the log files is important. For an XDR solution, information about AD is key. All right, email information can be also very important. EDR information, also very important. So all those aspects will be sent to that data lake that you have on your XDR. And then it will be correlated because if you want all that information visible from one single pane of glass, you need all those log files. So I hope that it's clear for you where XDR fits in this whole drawing or sketch. We add another abbreviation, which is BAS. It stands for breach and attack simulation. This is also upcoming. What we're gonna do is you've installed all these different tools. People install those. People made policies and changes and stuff like that. But how well does it actually defend you? At one point, you can do a pen test, for example, to see how well everything is configured. With a breach and attack simulation, we will do that more times, so we can do that all the time. We will just it will be done automatically, and it can do live attacks, and you will just actually put different nodes in your network. On your endpoint, you can install it. You can install it on the network. You can install it on email, and you can see how well are your solutions performing if we simulate an attack. And we can even take it a step further, and we can also do validation. So, all right, we did that attack. You have a certain result. Could be good, could be bad. If it's bad, you can do the necessary changes, and then you run it again, and then you get a good result. And you're going to keep running that to have the same result, because the moment someone does a config change and or your solution is not good enough anymore, your security stack is not good enough anymore, you want to be notified. So that's the validation part. It's going to say, all right, we just did a new attack, and we see that your firewall did not saw anything, and before it did. So it gives you an idea about how well are you performing, and what can be improved, and keep on improving, keep on performing well. So that's the whole breach and attack simulation validation part. Marketing did promise more acronyms because they added some in the email invite. So let's look at them.
Yeah, let's start with clearing our drawing here. Take it first call.
Yeah, so ZTNA, and then it's beautiful. It's like SDP, and then behind it, SDP is like ZTNA. Just like what I did usually in my exams. I didn't know the answer. Anyway, ZTNA is zero trust network access, and it's like SDP, which stands for software defined perimeter. It's another way to secure your access to applications through an application broker, and you want to make sure that you identify that user. So different terms, same results. IAM stands for Identity and Access Management. So you want to manage that control and audit that user with app authentication, but also session recording. So everything that user is doing, everything is typing in a command line and stuff like that, you want to be able to audit that. All right, next.
Machine learning versus artificial intelligence. I would be surprised if nobody in this session has been wondering what's it all about. It would take a very long time to explain this in this session, so we're not going to do that. But we have a machine learning session which we did, I believe, this summer, or the beginning of the year. I don't remember the timing. The link is right there, and we'll you get slides, so you'll be able to find it. Just look on Google in our exclusive network channel for machine learning in the 3+1 session. We think it's a very cool session where we start with some general introduction on a very simple machine learning classification problem for malware, and then we got some vendors showing how they use it in their environment. So if you want to know more about that, just go to that link. Risk-based authentication, we briefly mentioned it before in the MFA part. It's about getting authentications enforced based on a risk for a user, for example, or your system where that user is working on. If you see malicious activity in the network, you want to be able to quickly intervene. And one very harsh way is to kick out the user, lock his account, force him to change the password, log him out on every session. That's a bit hard. One more friendly way of doing it is, for example, just asking another way of validating your user and make sure that he can validate with his trusted device that he's the one making the connection. If it's an adversary doing it, then he won't be able to validate for example, the MFA. And you all want to do that on a risk base, making it dynamic. Managed detection and response, MDR. That's, let's say, a layer on top of EDR, if I can describe it that way. Just giving you managed services on that whole part. And there's probably a lot more acronyms. I hope that the Discord is still okay, because I see a lot of people in offline mode. I don't know if that has been enforced by the user itself. I just hope that the people are still in our Discord. But just give us your acronym. Throw them in the general channel in Discord, and we'll come back to it by the end of, or we're almost at the end, but we'll get you some answers on it. If you have an acronym which you are struggling with, which you want to know more about in cybersecurity, please, not in other areas. And then we'll see if we can get you an answer.
So, okay, we're almost at the end. This is also a little bit new for us. You like that approach, the more vendor agnostic approach. Of course, we'll still do our vendor updates, but if this interests you, is this something you want to see maybe each quarter, each half year, or say no, once a year is good enough? Just give your feedback on this. That's really helpful for us. So if Discord didn't work, just use the chat in Zoom if you're not on Discord.
Question is in the polling channel on Discord. See if I might believe that there's something wrong, because I don't think anybody's still there. So we'll move on to the next question. I'll put them in Discord as well. So this is just very valuable information for us. If you want this or not, if you find it useful, more of like a technology-focused session, solution-oriented session, just let us know. You can always drop a mail as well if you want. And then the final question is about Discord, so that might be a bit difficult if it's not working anymore. But okay, we'll give it a try again. Put it in the chat as well. Drop us an email. We really like you guys to give us the feedback, because it's a new thing that we're trying here, and we want to know if you liked it. So yeah, did you like the Discord channel? Do you want us to use it again? Yes, it was super cool and interactive. Do it again, or no, please. The logo still hurts my eyes, etc. I'll put the question in there as well. But again, if you cannot reply to Discord, please just let us know another way what you think of this session. Really valuable. Which brings us to the end.
All right, so thank you everyone for joining us today. Hopefully you learned a lot and you don't have more questions than you started, because that wasn't the goal. The goal was to inform you and to make sure you know which solution fits what need. Because like you see in the drawings, not every solution is a good fit for you if that's not the use case. So okay, if you have any other questions, just please reach out to us. We will share the recording afterwards. We will do the survey in the email also, because we can get a lot of feedback from the Discord part. So thanks everyone, and hopefully next time we can do this a real life
with breakfast.
with breakfast. All right.
Thank you guys. See you.
Thanks everyone. Bye.